Ambadas Gade was one of the founder members of the Progressive Artists Group that was established in Bombay in 1947. He is considered to be the first abstract artist who, with his use of emotional colors, cleaved a pathway of modernism in India post-independence. Born in 1917 at Talegaon in Vidurba district of Maharashtra, from a very young age he showed a predilection towards drawing. He also watched his grandmother rendering rangoli on the floor during various festivals. But at the same time, he had a compelling interest in science and mathematics, and that is how he obtained a degree in science from Nagpur University. When he got a job at Jabalpur, he wandered around the place and was bewitched by its landscape, especially the river Narmada flowing there. And it was here that he painted landscapes for the first time in watercolors. When he came back to Nagpur, he was convinced that he had the ability to become an artist and hence joined as a part-time student at the provincial Nagpur Art School. Later on, he became a full-time student and also obtained a diploma in painting. It was here at the Nagpur Art School that he met Raza. Raza, who had been inspired by the works of Walter Langhammer, particularly his sweeping brushstrokes and the compositions that he would compose, taught Gade and gave him certain tips on how to compose landscapes. It was at this time that is in the late 1940s, Raza was contemplating move to Bombay, and he egged Gade that he should join him also. Gade finally decided that he would move to Bombay with Raza. Here in Bombay, through Raza, he met Souza, Hussain, Bakre, Ara, and Gade, of course, continued to paint his landscape and he submitted them to the Bombay Art Society. It was one such landscape known as Omkareshwara that he submitted, won a silver medal, and it also attracted much attention from art patrons, connoisseurs, as well as the critics. And seeing his works, Souza felt that there was something very different in the way he composed, his use of colors, as well as in the way he observed the forms in the landscape. And so when the group was formed in 1947, he was invited to become part of it. Gade, when we look at his landscapes, he specialized only in landscapes, seems to have had a particular attraction towards nature, which ultimately became his muse. In painting these landscapes, he chose a very high vantage point or differing perspectives. And it is this combination of differing perspective points and the vantage positions which gave his work a very modernist character. In addition to that, his brushstrokes were equally varied. When he used watercolors, the brushstrokes were firm at the same time loose, and he was able to capture the ambience, whether it was a sunny landscape or whether it was a landscape under a grey-laden clouds. When it came to painting in oils, he used thick impasto colors and was able to essentialize the forms that he saw in nature. This was something which Gade felt intuitively, and he was able to reduce it to the minimal forms and established it and expressed it through his use of colors. Forms and colors in Gade's art are the most important, vital, seminal, and defining elements that also classified him as a modernist. Gade, with all humility, said that it is only when I came to Bombay I became aware of modern art. But all his earlier works that he had done till 1948 were works where it was his vision, it was his intelligence, it was his keen perception and insight that he was able to capture the forms and reduce them to the minimal shapes and establish it as part of his composition. Hence, forms became very important, and they were just not forms as such, but these forms were described and expressed through colors. Earlier, when his paintings were exhibited and the critics noted it, one of them said that they are significant forms, yes, but they seem to lack any emotion in his use of colors. Gade, however, later clarified that without emotions, no painting can be created. That every color of his is manifest with emotions, his feelings, and his sentiments that he brings to his canvas. And hence, Gade could also be classified as one of the brilliant colorists to have been ever born in India at this time, particularly in the late 1940s. The colors that Gade used were brilliant, contrasting, or they were luminescent, iridescent, bright, gem-like, shimmering colors, or they could be muted, subdued, subtle, nuanced. He had a control of absolute facility in the way he handled colors on the canvas. And this was one of his greatest assets as a modernist. Perhaps later he was inspired by the Expressionists or even by the Cubists and abstractionists as Paul Klee or Vasily Kandinsky. But somehow Gade, in creating his works, ultimately was able to reduce it to its minimal forms and shapes and then composed his compositions in such a way juxtaposed with his sweeping brushstrokes that were at the same time very dynamic and radical. And he saw to it that he never ever reproduced nature or imitated it in any way, because the commonality that he shared with the progressive artist members was to do away with the natural academic realism that was being propagated by the art school and which was also propounded by the Bombay Art Society in their exhibitions. So, in this respect, Gade's colors and Gade's forms were able to establish his uh, minimalism and also his abstraction. Between 1957 and 1977, Gade took up a job in Delhi where he worked at an Indian Institute of Education where he taught art education. At the same time, he also gave lectures on art history at an architectural school. And perhaps it was here, giving lectures to architecture students and also helping them in their projects, he imbibed and learned various other mediums as masonry, terracotta, wood crafts, etc. And working through the medium, it enabled him to look at the forms and shapes in an architectonic manner. And that is why perhaps these architectonic shapes also characterized much of Gade's works later on. As a matter of fact, a look at Gade's landscapes, across a broad canvas would show that he had such a versatility in handling the brushstrokes, in handling the colors, in handling as well as the forms that he derived from nature and the vantage viewpoints that he was able to render. His landscapes were of a very different character compared to much of the landscapes that had been uh, practiced earlier and which had a very strong sense of a romantic character. Of course, there was no romance involved in the works of Gade, but he looked at nature with great depth. He admired its forms and then he translated it through his expressionist use of colors. And this is where the greatness of Gade's landscape and his art lies. After working there in Delhi for almost 20 years, when it came to his retirement, he came back to Bombay and he settled in Chembur. And here he continued to paint. But the fierceness, the fire, the dynamism, the radicalism that was very much a part of his mental makeup had somehow reduced, and that fire also was slowly burning out. Gade at home refused to have any of his works displayed. Here he also created many still life paintings which have a strong Cezanne's character, or it also had a very cubist character. And his works he continued to work. But unfortunately, Gade never received the recognition that other progressive artists like Souza, Hussein, Raza, and Ara were able to obtain. A man very much reserved in character, He never spoke his mind out, but he felt very strongly about certain things, and these strong feelings, sentiments, and emotions, he brought it out in his works. Perhaps if he had been more vocal and had expressed his opinions, he would have been noticed. So, Gade, unfortunately, in his later years, became almost unknown, but he never gave up his love and commitment and dedication to his art of painting, which he continued to do so. He died in 2001 in Bombay, and today he remains and will continue to remain one of the greatest landscape artists who painted in an abstract manner because his vision was such that he was able to translate it, and a brilliant colorist who brought to his works a new vision that established the modernism in India in the post-independence era. And as a matter of fact, Gade himself had said that it is as a result of this progressive artist group that we became the pioneers in establishing the contemporary art and its development post independence. And as one of the critics very lucidly said, that his works begins with nature and ends with Gade. And that's a tremendous tribute to be paid to any artist.